I will just read this on behalf of Senator Legarda. Magandang araw sa inyong lahat. My warmest congratulations to the UNACOM and DFA MOAU. We have been celebrating Maritime and Archipelagic Nation Awareness Month, or MANAMO, since 2017, and I am happy to report that I have sponsored the Blue Economy Bill, Senate Bill number 2450, before the end of session last month. When passed, this bill will bring about the sustainable use of ocean resources for economic growth, improved livelihoods and jobs, and ocean ecosystems' health. It is a recognition of the huge economic potential of our coastal and marine resources, coupled with the obligation to ensure its continued provision of stocks and flows through conservation and better stewardship. The poorest of the poor in the country are those that are resource dependent, who rely almost completely on the coasts for their livelihood. The bill is a measure that intends to change this dire and unequal situation. It is a welcome development that we intend to go forward with by generating, understanding, and heeding science. What it takes to do so is first to generate the data. We must fund the efforts to determine the state of our oceans and coasts. We must also fund the enforcement that will defend the integrity of these ecosystems. We have to ensure that we have the regulatory muscle to protect and defend these resources. We need to take advantage of this ocean decade to not only generate the data, but also ensure its use in policy making. With serious implementation of a blue economy law, no longer will such wealth be invisible or treated merely as a drain and sink to a land-based economy. Our offshore area, including our EEZ, constitutes over 7 times our land area, and thus our economy and priorities should reflect this. Maraming salamat. Isang lunti ang Pilipinas para sa ating lahat.
Thank you very much for that, Ma'am Len. Now, we shall hear messages of support from some representatives of our government agencies who are heavily involved in ocean science. We now have on the floor Undersecretary of the Department of Agriculture, Yusek Drusilla Bayate. You have the floor, ma'am, for your message of support.
Good morning. In behalf of Senior Undersecretary Domingo Panganiban of the Department of Agriculture, I am very pleased to deliver the message of the department. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, good morning. Today, I stand before you to shed light on a critical topic that affects the well-being of our planet and future generations, the role of ocean science in sustainable development. Our oceans cover more than 70% of the Earth's surface, making them a cornerstone of our planet's health and vitality. They are not just a source of breathtaking beauty, but a vital component of the global ecosystem, providing numerous benefits to humanity. However, the oceans are facing unprecedented challenges, from climate change and overfishing to pollution and habitat destruction. To ensure a sustainable future, we must harness the power of ocean science. First and foremost, ocean science helps us understand the complex and interconnected web of life beneath the waves. It enables us to study marine biodiversity, ecosystems, and the delicate balance that sustains them. This knowledge is invaluable in developing strategies to protect and preserve marine life, ensuring that future generations can continue to benefit from the ocean's resources. Moreover, the oceans play a pivotal role in regulating our climate, They absorb vast amounts of carbon dioxide, helping to mitigate the impacts of climate change. Through ocean science, we can better comprehend these processes and devise innovative solutions, such as ocean-based renewable energy sources to combat climate change and reduce our carbon footprint. Ocean science is also crucial for sustainable fisheries management. By studying fish populations, migratory patterns, and the impact of fishing practices, we can ensure that our oceans continue to provide a vital source of protein while preventing overfishing and ecosystem collapse. Furthermore, ocean science contributes to our understanding of ocean acidification, which threatens marine life, coral reefs, and the food chain. Armed with this knowledge, we can work towards mitigating the causes and consequences of acidification, preserving the ocean's delicate ecosystems. In the pursuit of sustainable development, the oceans offer immense potential for renewable energy, such as offshore wind and wave energy. Ocean science helps us assess the feasibility and environmental impacts of these technologies, guiding responsible energy development that respects our planet's natural systems. Lastly, the oceans are a source of inspiration and innovation. Through biotechnology and the study of marine organisms, we can discover new medicines, materials, and technologies that have potential to improve human well-being and drive economic growth. In conclusion, the role of ocean science in sustainable development cannot be overstated. It is our compass, guiding us towards a future where we live in harmony with the oceans rather than exploiting them recklessly. As responsible stewards of this planet, it is our duty to support and invest in ocean science, for the oceans are not just our past, they are our future. Together, through science, collaboration, and informed decision-making, we can ensure that the oceans continue to be a source of life, wonder, and prosperity for generations to come. Thank you, and mabuhay.
Thank you very much for that message, Undersecretary Bayate. Next, we will present a pre-recorded message of support from the Office of Department of Science and Technology, Secretary Renato Solido.
As the Maritime and Archipelagic Nation Awareness Month 2023 closes, the Department of Science and Technology, DOST, affirms its commitment in promoting and contributing to the Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development 2021-2030, or what we call Ocean Decade. The ocean gives life not just to the organisms living in and beneath it, but it also provides life support to those living above it, including us humans. This is why we must strengthen the call for each and every one of us to paddle together and protect our shared ocean, which covers 70% of the planet. The department joins Ocean Decade's vision of the science we need for the ocean we want. Guided by the Science, Technology, and Innovation Foresight document, Pagtanaw 2050, we envision harnessing the talent and tools in science and technology to innovate towards a prosperous archipelagic maritime nation by 2050. At the DOST, we push forward science, technology, and innovation for a resilient, unified, and sustainable Philippines through strategic thrusts we call DOST 4 pillars, namely, promotion of human well-being, wealth creation, wealth protection, and sustainability. Aligned with these thrusts, The department intensifies its commitments in protecting our marine biodiversity, contributing to sustainable ocean economy, increasing resilience to ocean and coastal hazards, and coming up with solutions to ocean issues. Allow me to give a quick rundown of how we stand by this mission. The DOST supports studies or reconstruction of corals and seawater, and ecological and mangrove rehabilitation and restoration. These are also in support of the Reeds to Reef multi-agency approach of the Philippines. At the start of the year 2023, the DOST established the Philippines' first Coastal Engineering and Management Research and Development Center, COASTER, aimed at protecting resources and the coastal communities from coastal erosion and flooding through effective implementation of science and technology-based coastal management. Another research is on management of pollution and radioactivity, covering both terrestrial and marine ecosystems, where we study the use of nuclear and isotopic techniques to identify sources of and monitor transport of pollution and contaminants, just as how we used it in groundwater. To our colleagues in the government and public service, our friends from the industry, our partners in the academe, and the next generation, our youth, let us work together and save the ocean that connects us all. Let us support the 47 New Decade Actions officially endorsed at the 2023 World Oceans Day to address the 10 Ocean Decade challenges towards a clean, healthy and resilient, productive, predictive, safe, accessible, and inspiring and engaging ocean. Thank you very much. Maagham na araw po sa ating lahat.
Thank you very much for that message, Secretary Sulido. Finally, last but certainly not the least, we also have a message of support from Department of Environment and Natural Resources Secretary Maria Antonia Yulo Loizaga, which will be delivered by Ms. Joris Tupas.
Good morning to everyone. It is my pleasure to deliver the message of the Secretary of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Honorable Maria Antonia Yulo Loizaga. Although it's already October, this event serves as a reminder that we continue to honor and celebrate the rich cultural heritage and identity of the Philippines. Therefore, it gives me great pleasure to extend my warmest greetings. The DNR will continue to participate in the Maritime and Archipelagic Nation Awareness Celebration and Commemoration. This observance offers an opportunity for each of us to contemplate the immense treasures our nation possesses within our territorial seas, up to our exclusive economic zone. As a maritime nation blessed with rich biological diversity, all the more that we should recognize the critical role our seas play in our lives, from providing sustenance and livelihoods to being a source of inspiration and awe. However, we should also be reminded that marine life is not confined within the national boundaries. Hence, it is imperative that we not only steward what is ours, but we extend efforts and share responsibility with the rest of the world in protecting and conserving the biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction, the common heritage of mankind. It is our pleasure to announce that the Philippines already signed the High Seas Treaty, or the BBNJ agreement, during the United Nations General Assembly last month at the UN headquarters. We will actively take part in safeguarding and ensuring the integrity of the marine ecosystems beyond our territory. To strengthen our capacity to address the intersecting crises of biodiversity loss, climate change, and pollution, we need science-informed decision-making across government and private sectors while leveraging local and indigenous knowledge. We align our efforts with the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, and we commit to harnessing the best available science to drive sustainable practices, promote biodiversity, and mitigate the impacts of climate change in our oceans. To transform our ambition into action, we will establish marine stations next year to serve as sentinels in our archipelago to actively foster strategic partnerships and collaboration with stakeholders in the Philippines and beyond our borders. We will we will have these in strategic locations to represent all 6 marine biogeographic regions of the Philippines and would adopt ecosystem-based approaches to identify, map, secure, observe, monitor, and evaluate the state of our coastal and marine resources. This is essential for the information, awareness, and active involvement of the Filipino citizenry and the world in the protection, conservation, and sustainable management of marine biodiversity, not only advocating and advancing for the science we need for the ocean we want, but for the ocean we need for the future we want. More importantly, we pledge to develop and implement science-informed policies and practices that foster marine conservation, pollution reduction, climate action, and responsible fisheries management. We also seek partnerships with like-minded nations and organizations to amplify our impact. Let us remember that the seas connect us all, transcending boundaries and differences. It is in our collective interest to ensure their health and vitality. So, as we continue to celebrate the diversity and bounty of our seas, and as we embark and contribute to the objectives of the UN Decade of Ocean Science, we reiterate our resolve to protect, conserve our maritime heritage. Together, we can navigate the challenges ahead and leave a legacy of thriving oceans for generations to come. Thank you, and may our commitment to sustainable seas inspire us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jores, and thank you very much as well to Secretary Yulo Loizaga for her message of support. Now we move on to the presentations of our distinguished panel of speakers. First, we will be having Dr. Gil S. Jacinto, who will be presenting the UN Decade of Ocean Science and the Philippines' participation in the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, or IOC. Dr. Jacinto has been designated as the Philippine national focal point of the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO since 2014. He is a former professor from the UP Marine Science Institute and is currently a consultant for the Philippine National Commission for UNESCO, or UNACOM. He is an academician for the National Academy of Science and Technology, or NAST, and a scientist. Without further ado, a round of virtual applause, please, for Dr. Jacinto.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Let me share my screen now. Are you able to see this? Okay, thank you. If you can hear me, I assume you can hear me. Let me walk you through the next few minutes on this theme, Sea Science Sustainability, our path during the UN Decade of Ocean Science. Good morning, everyone. Let me ask a question to start my talk, and as MANAMo comes to an end. What have you discovered that is new, exciting, inspiring, fascinating, perhaps even infuriating during MANAMo? I can't see you now, but you need not answer that question right now, but think about it. What is new? What is different? What have you learned in the past month that is related to our archipelagic and maritime nation? In the next few minutes, whatever it is that you have learned, let me add a little bit more. My talk which will last for about 10 or so minutes, I hope, will just briefly walk us through the UN Decade of Ocean Science, which I hope many of you are already aware of, and then our connection as a country with the IOC and IOC Westpac, and then a brief glimpse of our national initiatives aligned or aligning with the decade, and how we might take a few more steps forward in the immediate future. You've seen the slide perhaps many times, but it doesn't matter. The Ocean Decade is a period from 2021 to 2030 that was declared by the United Nations as a decade of ocean science. It's a rally cry for all countries. It urges us to work together to stop the oceans from getting worse and to use the transformative power of ocean science to build a better future. Its vision, as you'll see on the screen, and has been essentially the mantra for the decade, is the science we need for the ocean we want. Its mission, transformative ocean science solutions for sustainable development, connecting people and the ocean. And objectives include ensuring that scientific knowledge contributes to policies, practices, and innovations to reverse the cycle of ocean decline. The Ocean Decade outcomes that DOSC Secretary Rene Solidum has also already mentioned are effectively 7. A clean, a healthy and resilient, a predicted, a safe, a sustainably harvested and productive, a transparent and accessible, and an inspiring and engaging ocean. The Decade of Ocean Science offers us the tools, knowledge, and I imagine and I know collaborative platforms to conserve and sustainably use our invaluable resources. But it's not just about preservation. It's about ensuring that our children and their children inherit an ocean as beautiful as the one we once knew, our Pamana. So let me walk you through now, in brief, what have we accomplished on the global level since the start of this decade? Well, if you see on the slide on the right is a snapshot of what's happened so far. This is a report of 2021 to 22 that provides an update of 2 years of implementation of the decade amidst a world that went through the COVID pandemic. It lists decade actions, programs, projects, contributions, and activities led by partners from 40 countries. It's established 7 regional task forces and 28 national decade committees. Soon, we hope to be among the 28 and increase this number even more. It's mobilized funding and it's reached out and engaged in further numbers, about 22,900 followers and 4,000 members from 139 countries participating in the Global Stakeholder Forum. I bring back this figure, 22,900 followers in social media looking at the Ocean Decade. I believe that even just in the Philippines, we can reach out to many more thousands of our countrymen. If you're interested to learn a little bit more and you've noticed that I've started to flash QR codes, if you have a phone, do scan the QR codes because it will quickly lead you to these websites. So if you go to oceandecade.org, you will see the decade actions that have been approved at the level of ocean basins, targeting the challenges and also the types of action that these are all about. If there is something that we can also do very soon and quickly, a low-hanging fruit, if you will, is for us, whatever organization you're affiliated with, to consider registering our activities at the very least related to the ocean science or Ocean Decade to the oceandecade.org platform. And you can be walked through how you do that by scanning this QR code. Here's another resource that I feel we would all benefit from. If we want a visual feast, I recommend visiting the Ocean Decade Image Bank and Toolkit, as well as the link to the ocean-related videos. These are resources that are in fact free to access and to use for as long as you just acknowledge the source. They are happy to share their images and videos for us to use in our campaigns as well. Now, in addition to IOC's global initiatives for the decade, and for which you can gain much more information by clicking on the QR codes that I sent to you, the IOC subsidiary body in the Western Pacific, or WESPAC, expanded its scope and focus to include the Ocean Decade. IOC WESPAC has proposed and begun 4 programs under the decade. One on marine spatial planning, another on plastic emission to the ocean, one on the second cooperative study of the Kurusho, the strongest ocean current in the Western Pacific, and a fourth on a network of regional training and research centers to build even more capacity in our region. WESPAC also held the kickoff conference last November 2021 in hybrid format due to the COVID pandemic. And this was one of WESPAC's main events. In her address on behalf of the Philippine government at the regional conference, Undersecretary Maria Teresa Lazaro said, and I quote, "We need to take an inclusive and nationwide approach towards promoting a deeper appreciation and a better understanding of the oceans, and emphasize the need to act now to preserve and protect them for generations to come." She continues, "The Philippines considers the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development as an opportunity to integrate ocean science, indigenous knowledge, and innovation in policymaking for sustainable management." And towards the end, she says, "We are committed to making the Ocean Decade a reality." End of quote. Well, so far, I've taken you on a brief tour of the decade through the eyes of the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission and IOC WESPAC. Well, what has the Philippines done to contribute to the decade's vision and outcomes? I will go through some of our activities and contributions. WESPAC has a program to accelerate regional capacity development through a network of regional training and research centers, which I just mentioned. The Marine Science Institute of UP Diliman hosts one of the IOC's RTRCs, the RTRC on Reef Management and Restoration. A training workshop on coral larval reseeding was held in April of this year in Bolinao, Pangasinan, with Filipino and WESPAC participants, the first of what is planned to be a regular contribution of RTRC to the region. The Global Ocean Science Report is an initiative by the IOC to assess the status and trends in ocean science capacity around the world. It offers a global record of who, how, and where ocean science is conducted, generating knowledge, helping to protect ocean health, and empowering society to support sustainable ocean management. The Philippines, so far, unfortunately, has not been able to contribute data to this effort, and therefore the United UNOCOM, or UNESCO National Commission, supported a preliminary study to address the need to provide data for the ongoing IOC Global Ocean Science Report. This has been put forward already this year, and we need and wish to expand on this preliminary study. What other initiatives have been in place? And these are just some. We've shared announcements about IOC and IOC Westpac Decade workshops and training, inviting or even targeting participants to these events. We've actively participated in the Westpac Regional Planning Conference and ISC Conference, which will take place next year in April 2024. And if I might just pitch, if you're interested, and I hope you would be, join this conference. It is in Bangkok. It will be in Bangkok, and there's much to learn and maybe even contribute. There is, in fact, also already a website on the Decade of Ocean Science, which UNACOM has put up. We've been interacting, we've been consulting with stakeholders and advocates on the formal establishment of our National Decade Committee. We've had the aligning our activities, and many of these you are familiar with: the MANAMo of DFA, the Month of the Ocean of DNR, the 30 by 30 Global Conservation Pledge by DNR and WC, the PAMS, the Philippine Association of Marine Science Symposium, the webinars on Philippine Seas by UPMSI and UNACOM, and a forthcoming international conference on the biosphere and sustainability. Before long, or in the near future, what may be among our targets? Can we already have a national decade formally established and registered this year? The National Decade Committees, as you'll see on this figure, are voluntary groups of stakeholders that develop opportunities for a country to contribute to and benefit from the global momentum of the ocean decade. In our region, Japan, Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia have already established their NDCs. I hope we can have one registered this year. ECOP, again, a low-hanging fruit. ECOP is the Early Career Ocean Professionals group or even movement. Anyone who makes a living from a healthy ocean with 10 years or less of professional experience, I imagine, and therefore it's the millennials among you, can be part of ECOP. There's no fee to join. You just sign up by going again to their website, and they have envisioned and put forward some of the things that they can do as young professionals for the decade. I urge you to join and be part of this. And soon enough, I hope we can also establish our Philippine node for ECOP. I'm almost done. Actually, we need ambassadors for the ocean. Every individual, regardless of age or background, is essential for the Ocean Decades mission. We need envoys, diplomats, emissaries, and catalysts of change. We are more than just bystanders. We are envoys of hope and agents of positive change, each contributing to the revival and restoration of our oceans. The vision, the mantra, and the tagline of the Ocean Decade is the science we need for the ocean we want. We're getting more aware of the outcomes that we wish, but also the challenges that we face. I propose that alongside this tagline, we consider the science we need for the maritime and archipelagic nation we want. And as we end this year's MANAMo celebration, remember that our oceans are more than just vast expanses of blue and water. They are the heart and soul of our country. The Ocean Decade isn't, in my mind, just a time frame, not just 10 years, but a collective movement. And together, we are the agents and the tide of change. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jacinto, for that inspiring presentation. Now, to contextualize Dr. Jacinto's presentation, we have the director of the Marine Science Institute of the University of the Philippines, Dr. Laura David, who will be presenting Ocean Science in the Philippines. Dr. David, you have the floor.
Hello, good morning to all. I will turn off my video when I start talking so that there will be no delays in the audio. Okay, thank you for that. So allow me to present to you um, a little bit more, no? Of what Dr. Jacinto presented, which is setting the targets for our future marine research agenda here in the Philippines within still the decade of the ocean. So everybody's familiar with this quote from Mama Irina. The ocean is vital for our culture, our economies, our lives, and the very survival of our planet. And that seems so obvious. And yet, the Philippines, when you ask children how many islands there are, they can name the 7,641 islands. But that only composes less than 300 square kilometers of our territory. We are actually 87% ocean. And yet, a lot of our decision making, a lot of our science, a lot of our engagement seems to forget that we are actually an archipelagic country. So, and even in terms of output, no, of our science, this is research on publications from the 1970s all the way to now, this decade. And what you can see is we still have a limited number of publications, contributions to the science. In spite of the fact that we are the center of marine shore fish biodiversity, we're part of the coral triangle. We have a high endemism, high biodiversity, and still, no, we don't have enough of our publications. Um, and but it is ramping up, and due to huge part to contributions of the younger generation. So I urge you, just like Dr. Jacinto, the millennials and the younger generations, to also contribute to the science of the oceans. We actually took a look at how many there are in terms of active research people doing marine work in the Philippines. MSI, of course, is a huge part of that. And there's also what Dr. Jacinto mentioned, which is the Association of Marine Scientists in the Philippines. And together, we only have about 540 plus marine scientists who are active in the sciences at the moment. So how do we measure against the rest of the world? No, Norway lauds itself for having the highest per capita of marine scientists in the world. So they have 364 for every million of their population. That totals 1,914 marine scientists. They also boast that they're the second longest coastline in the world. No, we are the fifth. So if you take that 1,914 and divide that by their length of the coastline, then and multiply that by the length of our coastline, that means we should have at least 1,195 marine scientists. So 544 over 1,995, this should be 95. That's half of what we need. So we need to develop more researchers. So how do we do this? We do this by engaging and enhancing regional research and investing in research infrastructure for data acquisition and analysis. And I'll take the next few slides to show you and hopefully inspire you to dream with me, to dream with the rest of us in making a mark during the decade of the ocean. So first of all, we should know that the ocean is not stopped by any boundaries except land. So therefore, anything that happens within our waters actually influences the rest of the region. No? That being said, we should therefore encourage collaboration between the countries that surround our waters. Also, if we take a look at the recent analysis from CHED, there are 32 established marine science programs in the country. There are 3 more that are undergoing the procedure of being accredited by CHED. And therefore, there are a lot of us from all over the country, and we should actually be able to harness all of these human resources. One way to do that, I think, is to encourage niches. There's not just one thing that is solved by marine scientists. There's a huge diversity in issues that need solving from the marine science point of view, from the ocean point of view. So there's biodiversity, medicine, food, fisheries, energy, protection, climate, tourism, shipping, and many more. No? So we should actually have people that are focusing on this. And each of the 32 plus institutions can actually focus in one or two of these so that there will be niches of the different strengths. So for example, if the Batangas University, for example, would be interested in looking at tourism, then anybody in the whole Philippines who want to study tourism of the ocean, which includes coral reef tourism, mangrove tourism, and so on, will then go to Bicol University, right? So it should be that way. That way we have strengths for the entire country. Pasensya na po, hinihika ako. Aside from that, we need to engage our national government agencies. So here at the UPMSI, we do have professional masters that is geared so that managers will have be science-based, management will be science-based. And we currently have the Tropical Marine Ecosystem Management, and DNR is very much aware of this. They're one of our biggest partners. And as you can see from the map, we have been training people from all over the Philippines for the last 6 years. This is 8 cycles in 6 years, and we want to continue this partnership and also engage other NGAs. We will also soon open another professional master's, this time in operational oceanography, targeting our NGAs that are more concerned on navigation in the open ocean. And this hopefully will start by next year. Additionally, there are 108 million Filipinos. So there may be only 540 plus marine scientists, but there are 108 million Filipinos. And there must be a way to also engage our citizens so that they also contribute not only to the knowledge, but also to the management of our resources. One way to do this, of course, is to make sure that they have the right tools to observe the ocean and report back to the national, to have a national state of the Philippine waters. So we have been developing with other institutions, this one with National Institute of Physics, a way to measure the coral cover without needing divers. So it's just a contraption we call ARAS, teardrop, that we deploy from Bacas and then tow. You're able to survey a stretch of 30 kilometers per day using this contraption. Okay? And then there's ways to analyze it afterwards. We also have another one. We know that since the Philippines is so biodiverse, it's hard to actually measure the fish. You need divers or experts. So we develop what's called fish eye. This will identify the fish, count them for you, actually give you the biomass and the population density. So this has now patent in the US, Brazil, and Mexico. Soon in Indonesia, I hope, and then the Philippines. We also have what is called the National Academic Research Fleet. So along with other institutions from all over the Philippines, Bicol University, Visayas in Miagao, MSU IIT in Mindanao, and also MSU Tawi-Tawi, we now had what is called the National Academic Research Fleet. So these are boats that are used exclusively for research purposes. No, before we would have to request use of fishing vessels of BIFAR or vessels of the Philippine Coast Guard. Now the institutions that do academic work now have means to do it and have control over the schedule and where to go. No? So we have UPV co-sponsoring with UP, the MV Talingas, that's Bicol University, and then MV Panayana in the Visayas, and MV Kalilintad in northern Mindanao, And all of these were bought under the UP GAA. And then MSU Tawi-Tawi acquired a boat themselves and joined the National Academic Research Fleet. And this is using the MV Lumpang Basi. So hopefully with this, we'll have more presence both in the internal waters and in the waters that surround the Philippines. Okay. And we enjoin all the institutions to join one of these cruises and do your own research on our platforms. Aside from this, we want to do additional infrastructure development. The Philippines is situated nicely geographically that we can actually be test laboratories for various different kinds of marine technology, such as marine biotech, biodiversity research museum, macrocosm tank laboratories, and the Marine Technology Testing Center. Pahintulutan nyo lang ako pakita some of the things that we are dreaming of in the Marine Technology Testing Center. Ang ganda kasi ng Pilipinas, it's so diverse, but at the same time, if you put anything in the water, ilang araw lang po, puno na siya ng barnacles and so on. So it's a perfect area to actually test biofouling. So the technology of biofouling is quite huge. The market is quite huge, and we are in the perfect area to be able to test such technologies. We are also perfect in monitoring in developing monitoring devices underwater and underwater communication. Lalo na because we're an archipelago, so there's a lot of ways to test, what is blocked by land, what can still be accessed through the different basins and so on. So that's another thing we're dreaming of. The other thing is deep water closed system mariculture. We are familiar currently with the open mariculture systems of the Philippines, and in some areas that is actually being detrimental to the environment. So there is a push for deep water closed systems. Again, we are in the perfect area to do that. And finally, decrease in our reliance on fossil fuel to develop green energy or blue energy production, so that we can use the straits in between the islands to actually harness energy and contribute to the renewable energy grid of the Philippines. So lahat po ito, ay what we call now the new term is mission science for sustainability. So developing science with the end goal of actually helping the society and influencing policy and influencing development. So sana po sabay-sabay tayo, and hand in hand we can develop the science for the ocean the way we need it. So in the end, kagaya nung sabi ng Decade of the Ocean, towards the ocean we need for the future we want. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much for your very informative presentation, Dr. David. In fact, we actually have a question na po nga in relation to your presentation. Would you still have time po ba, ma'am?
Sige po, I have 5 minutes.
Sige po, ma'am. We have a question na nagtatanong po, may I ask if UPMSI could help establish marine science curriculum in OMSC and in MINSU, mga state universities po in Mindoro, especially po if may office po kayo in Mindoro. And they are also wondering if a fleet can be assigned in Mindoro being part of the VIP.
Maraming salamat po. So there is, yung second question muna, one of the boats, which is MV Patag, it's a catamaran that you can take about 10 people out at any given time, will be based in Puerto Galera. So there's a UP system facility there called the Cradle, and that will be based there. And that is also available for use by, of course, all the research universities all over the Verde Island Passage. Aside from that, Opo, very willing to help develop the curriculum. Just let us know, contact us directly. May dalawang hat po ako, hat ng MSI, pero I'm also the chair for CHED Technical Panel for Marine marine science. So very much willing to help. Just let us know what you need.
Thank you once again for your time, Dr. David. We were informed nga po na parang right after this, you already have a class. Talagang yung hat niyo po as an educator, no? Pero yes, thank you for your presentation. I'm sure po nasagot naman po yung tanong na yun. Sige po. Thank you again. So, Dr. Laura David is a physical oceanographer who was also a lawyer on UNESCO for Women in Science National Fellow in 2011, as well as an Outstanding Young Scientist Awardee of the National Academy of Science and Technology in 2007. In 2002, Dr. David also participated in the roundtable discussion entitled Climate Change and Resilience, Bringing Science and Technology to the Ocean in a Manner Consistent with Traditional Knowledge during the Group of Friends of Small Island Developing States meeting on the occasion of World Oceans Day. So talaga pong expertise po ito ni Dr. David. We now move on to our next resource person who will provide to us a diplomat's perspective on the linkages between science, policy, as well as diplomacy. Assistant Secretary of the Department of Foreign Affairs, Maritime and Ocean Affairs Office, Maria Angela A. Ponce will be presenting on the Bridging Science, Policy, and Diplomacy, the 2016 South China Sea Arbitral Award, and the request for the ITLOS Advisory Opinion on Climate Change. A brief biography of Assistant Secretary Maria Angela Ponce. She is currently the Ambassador Designate to Malaysia. Prior to becoming the Assistant Secretary of the Maritime and Ocean Affairs Office, she was also the Assistant Secretary for Treaties and Legal Affairs. She had been the Minister and Legal Advisor of the Permanent Mission of the Philippines to the United Nations, New York. With that said, and without further ado, please help me welcome Assistant Secretary Ponce as she delivers her presentation.
Thank you, Alex, and good morning again. And I'm very privileged to come after Dr. David and Dr. Jacinto with their very impressive presentations on ocean science and the work that we do and the potential that there's so much out there for all of us. I will be discussing the topic Bridging Science, Policy, and Diplomacy, the 2016 Arbitral Award in the ITLOS Advisory Opinion on Climate Change. The outline of my presentation is as follows. I will first be providing a background of case number 31 on the request for an advisory opinion submitted by the Commission of Small Island States on Climate Change, which we shall refer to as COSIS. And then I will look at the Philippines, I will discuss the Philippines oral statement at ITLOS. And finally, I will look at the significance of the 2016 South China Sea Arbitration Award in relation to marine environment and how it was utilized by the Philippines in its oral submissions. Next slide, please. Just a background on the request. The COSIS, or the Commission of Small Island States on Climate Change and International Law, was established in 2021 at the sidelines of the Conference of Parties to the UNF Convention on Climate Change and UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, or what we call as the UNFCCC, at the sidelines of COP26 in 2021 in Glasgow. Now, the mission of COSIS was to take collective action to protect and preserve the climate system, including the marine environment, through the promotion, progressive development, and implementation of rules and principles of international law concerning climate change. The agreement specifically empowered COSIS to request the International Tribunal on the Law of the Sea, or ITLOS, advisory opinions on any legal question within the scope of UNCLOS. A year later, on 12 December 2022, COSIS submitted a request for an advisory opinion on climate change to ITLOS. Now, the membership of COSIS is limited to the members of the Alliance of Small Island States. And at the time of the request for the advisory opinion, COSIS had 6 members: Antigua and Barbuda, Niue, Palau, St. Lucia, Tuvalu, and Vanuatu. Since then, it has been joined by St. Vincent and Grenadines and St. Kitts and Nevis. Next slide. Now, the what was the question that COSIS put before the tribunal? They wanted to ask, as you see on screen, what are the specific obligations of states parties to the UNCLOS, including Part 12 of the UNCLOS, which relates to marine environment? Two questions. First, to prevent, reduce, and control pollution of the marine environment in relation to the deleterious effects that result or are likely to result from climate change, including through ocean warming and sea level rise and ocean acidification, which are caused by anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere. And second, to protect and preserve the marine environment in relation to climate change impacts, including ocean warming and sea level rise and ocean acidification. So the advisory opinion request is framed upon the specific obligations that states have under UNCLOS. Next slide. So the Philippines actively participated in the oral proceedings of ITLOS by delivering a statement which highlighted the effect of climate change on the Philippines as an archipelagic and maritime nation, which is regularly exposed to extreme weather events like typhoons and sea level rise. The Philippines was among 34 states and 5 international organizations which participated in the oral hearings. The Philippine delegation, through Ambassador Carlos Soreta of our permanent mission in Geneva, myself, and Assistant Solicitor General Gilbert Medrano of the Office of the Solicitor General, delivered the oral statement on the behalf of the Philippines on 19 September 2023, a few weeks ago. Next slide. So what we highlighted was how climate change has severely impacted the Philippines and other archipelagic and small island states. We noted that according to the 2022 World Risk Report, the Philippines ranks first among countries most at risk to disasters and extreme natural events such as tsunamis, floods, and drought. We argued that to address climate change, states have the binding obligations, among others, not to harm the marine environment through greenhouse gas emissions and to enact and enforce measures to prevent marine pollution and to protect and preserve the marine environment from the effects of climate change. We submitted that greenhouse gases qualify as pollution of the marine environment as provided for as defined under Article 1, Paragraph 4 of UNCLOS. This paragraph provides the elements of what is considered pollution of the marine environment. First is its nature. It is a substance or energy. Second is its source. It is anthropogenic or introduced by man, directly or indirectly, into the marine environment. And third is the result. It results or is likely to result in deleterious effects, of which an indicative list is provided, such as harm to living resources and marine life, hazards to human health, hindrance to marine activities, including fishing and legitimate uses of the sea, impairment of quality for use of seawater, and reduction of amenities. As greenhouse gases fulfill all of these elements, we submitted that they should be considered as pollution of the marine environment. We also submitted that UNCLOS should be interpreted in light of changing circumstances and changing laws. It should be interpreted with subsequent developments in international law and policy in mind and in relation to other environmental law regimes. Now, we strongly asserted relevant portions of the 2016 South China Sea arbitration, where the arbitral tribunal ruled, among others, that the environmental obligations in Part 12 of the UNCLOS apply to states, irrespective of where the alleged harmful activities took place, and that said obligations apply to all states with respect to the marine environment in all maritime areas, both inside the national jurisdiction of states and beyond it. It was in the 2016 South China Sea Arbitral Award where an international tribunal had the opportunity to extensively tackle UNCLOS environmental obligations, specifically those under Part 12, which is the protection and preservation of the marine environment. we noted that prior to this request for an advisory opinion on climate change, no other ITLOS case or advisory opinion had considered UNCLOS obligations in relation to climate change, nor specific issues arising from ocean warming, ocean acidification, and sea level rise. So in effect, this request for an advisory opinion was a landmark and historic. The 2016 arbitral award was arguably the most significant decision of an UNCLOS court or tribunal interpreting environmental obligations to date. The award confirmed that Part 12 of UNCLOS can evolve. The award also touches upon the extent to which Part 12 of UNCLOS interacts with other environmental treaty regimes in order to adapt to new challenges. And we also stress that the award also confirmed that the duty to report the results of an environmental impact assessment or EIA is absolute. Now, many think that the award only relates to geopolitical insecurity issues in the South China Sea in relation also to maritime entitlements. But what's very important was that the award also, again, as I had said earlier, had a lot to say on the UNCLOS and the marine environment. The tribunal found that China's activities in the South China Sea was harmful to the environment, in particular, that China failed to protect and preserve the marine environment by tolerating, protecting, and failing to prevent its fishermen from engaging in the large-scale harvesting of endangered species and giant clams in a manner as to be severely destructive to the coral reef ecosystem. Furthermore, China's large-scale land reclamation and construction of artificial islands also caused severe damage to the coral reef environment. We note that under Article 192 of UNCLOS, which is under Part 12, this provides for the general obligation of states to protect and preserve the marine environment. And as confirmed by the award, the obligation of states to protect and preserve the marine environment covers areas within national jurisdiction as well as areas beyond national jurisdiction. And this requires states to take active measures to prevent harm, to conserve marine living resources, and to preserve the ecological balance of the oceans as a whole. Article 194, paragraph 1, meanwhile establishes the obligation of states to take individually or jointly as appropriate all measures that are necessary to prevent, reduce, and control pollution of the marine environment. And this pertains to two specific obligations, namely the obligation not to cause damage to the environment of other states and areas beyond the limits of national jurisdiction, or what we call the no harm rule, and the obligation of due diligence. These obligations applies regardless of where the pollution of the marine environment originates. This point was emphasized in the arbitral award, where the tribunal stated that, and I quote, the environmental obligations in Part 12 apply to states irrespective of where the alleged harmful activities took place. And second, that again I quote, the obligations in Part 12 apply to all states with respect to the marine environment in all maritime areas, both inside the national jurisdiction of states and beyond it. As can be seen from the proceedings, many participating states cited the award in their written and oral submission or oral submissions in answering the legal questions submitted to ITLOS. And one of the notable aspects of the arbitral award was its reliance on scientific evidence in determining the extent of environmental damage caused by certain activities in the region. The integration of scientific data into the legal framework showcased the importance of bridging science, policy, and diplomacy. Building upon the momentum created by the award, the request for an advisory opinion in ITLOS on climate change actually strengthens the role of science in international law and policy making. Climate change poses significant challenges to maritime boundaries in coastal states, making it crucial to address the legal implications of this global issue. And as we stated in our oral submissions, the science behind climate change, and greenhouse gas emissions on the marine environment is unassailable. In arguing for the Philippine position during the proceedings for the arbitral award in 2016, and even in the recent ITLOS hearings, we relied on science and facts to craft and strengthen our position. For example, in our oral submissions, we relied heavily on the sixth assessment report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or AR6, to confirm that human activities, principally through emissions of greenhouse gases, have unequivocally caused global warming, and to provide scientific evidence that climate change is affecting marine ecosystems through rising sea temperatures, ocean acidification, and sea level rise. This is but one example of how science contributes to policymaking and in the conduct of diplomacy. And in closing, I just want to add and to echo what Dr. Jacinto had said on having the science we need for the maritime and archipelagic nation that we want. And thank you for that, Dr. Jacinto. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Assistant Secretary Ponce, for your presentation, highlighting the crucial role that science plays in international law as well as diplomacy. With all of the speakers having presented, we now open the floor for questions to our panelists. We actually have a few questions already. For our dear presenters, this question is directed to Dr. Hill in particular. The question reads as follows. For an archipelagic country, and while waiting for the NDC registration, is the Ocean Decade effectively engaging with stakeholders from all sectors in addition to government agencies, industry, academia, and civil society? As part of the non-oceanography academia, how can we support, on a granular and pragmatic level, sustainable ocean management in a way that is inclusive and equitable, more than just advocating for an information dissemination?
Well, thank you very much for the question. Short answer, if you are eligible, join ECOP, the Early Career Ocean Professional Group. I can reshare the website because I visited the website, and as I said, we'd like to set up an ECOP also in the Philippines. They have very practical ways for young people to be engaged and to take part in the Ocean Decade and the things that we do. I mean, consider how much do you or do we know about the Philippines as an archipelago, as a maritime country? I mean, I posed that question at the start of my talk. Are you more informed 1 month after we started this month of the ocean and a maritime nation, an archipelagic nation? And then I said one realization this morning. Again, I met my grandson on his way for an exam for sa Araling Panlipunan, and he was reviewing because his mom was with him, and he was being asked, what is the distance based on UNCLOS from the baseline for our EEZ? And I was struck because I never knew that. I never learned that when I was in grade school. It's only grade 4. And apparently grade 3, nandun na rin nga. So we've made some leaps and some changes. So I suggest the young people can think about in their own lives, how can we contribute? Let's say, for instance, a cleaner ocean, the plastics that we use, the water bottles that we dispose of after we drink. Do we need really your bottled water? Can we not just use tap water? Among others. So if we reflect on what we need to do and we reflect on the vision of the oceans and of our country, there is so much that we can do, little things that could collectively then make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Jacinto. Actually, the question was directed to all the participants. Although Dr. David is no longer here, perhaps Assistant Secretary Ponce could also offer her insights. How can we, in general, regardless of the sector we belong in, support and promote sustainable ocean management in a way that is inclusive and equitable?
I have the mic. Okay. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Thank you, Alex. And I think I take off from what Dr. Jacinto had said, and that we can do aside from doing the institutional actions like joining ECO and doing what we can through the Ocean Decade. But what we do on a personal level matters a lot. It's I echo that's very important that you recognize that on your own you can do a lot, like again lessening the use of plastic in your daily life, again always questioning whenever you purchase anything, or whether when you're throwing something away, whether you really do need to do that, or you really need to retain this, and engaging in lots of again recycling programs that we have, even joining coastal cleanups in your daily life. Everything that you do has an effect, and even if you contribute, you think that it has not, it's a very small scale level. What you do, if that's multiplied by a lot, that really means a lot already, and it can. Again, we start small. We start with our own personal, but again, it what's important is that that's scaled up and multiplied. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Assistant Secretary Ponce. We also have another question. So with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals still in effect, in what way will the emphasis on the decade of ocean science be helpful on the attainment of the global targets, considering that this is also the UN decade on ecosystem restoration? Who would like to answer first between Dr. Jacinto or Assistant Secretary Ponce?
I'll try to respond very briefly. Well, there are tracks, if you will, and emphasis. The decade of ocean science for sustainable development, and the emphasis also a theme on biodiversity. They actually mesh. They come together, because if you think about decade outcomes related even to the biodiversity, we're looking at a clean ocean that's linked to biodiversity, a healthy and resilient ocean, that too is linked to biodiversity, a predicted ocean, for instance. How much corals do we have in this country, and how much more corals will we have if we were to continue to degrade at this rate because of the pollution that we degenerate? A safe ocean, a sustainably and a harvested and productive ocean. Those are themes that really mesh with the themes of other programs and global programs as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dr. Jacinto. Assistant Secretary Ponce, your thoughts, please.
Thank you, Alex. I was assigned to our mission in UN when the SDGs were negotiated, and when the 2030 agenda was negotiated, and that was adopted, and that was in 2015. And in 2015, when we set 2030 as the a target date for reaching all of the SDGs, it felt like 15 years was a very long time, and that in 15 years we could achieve all of these goals that we had set, because there was so much momentum and support from the international community on doing this, and recognition that we had to do something. But then how many years are we into it? I think we have 7 years left to be able to achieve this, and there's been widespread recognition that we're not going to reach this target, to reach these goals by 2030. In SDG 14 itself, which is on the oceans, there are several targets there that were supposed to be reached in 2020, and which we did not. So, but it's important that we continue to try to attain this SDG, the goals and the targets that we have there on a national level, because each country is supposed to submit its reports to the UN on how it's working to implement and reach these targets. But as Dr. Jacinto had said, these are not standalone targets. They relate to each other within the goals themselves. The goal, for instance, on ocean relates to goals on again, for instance, biodiversity, and to other environmental frameworks that we have. So it's important that we keep on seeing them as a holistic framework, and not just a standalone frameworks or actions that we can do. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you again, Dr. Jacinto and Assistant Secretary Ponce. So those were the only questions we have. We are now reaching the tail end of this webinar. But before that, let us reminiscence as to the celebration of our MANAMO for this year, 2023. We would like to present a short video which gathers and showcases the different activities that our different foreign service posts and consular offices have implemented for this year's MANAMO celebrations. Thank you very much, Romark, for showing our presentation. Without further ado, to finally and officially close this webinar, let us hear from the Secretary General of the Philippines National Commission for UNESCO, or UNICOM, Secretary General Ivan Anthony S. Hinares.
Good morning to everyone. On behalf of the UNESCO National Commission of the Philippines, or UNICOM, we express our sincere gratitude to all of you who joined us today as we introduce the Decade of Ocean Science to a wider audience, conveying its deeper meaning and significance to all of us. We also thank our partners from the Department of Foreign Affairs, especially the Maritime and Ocean Affairs Office, who made this possible. Also with the support of OAMS and OPCD, to make this a platform for getting across the message of bridging science, policy, and diplomacy. We thank Senator Loren Legarda and the representatives of the Department of Foreign Affairs, the University of the Philippines Marine Science Institute, or UPMSI, the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, or DNR, the Department of Science and Technology, DOST, and the Department of Agriculture, who champion our cause, the ocean we need for the future we want, and has expressed support for the upcoming activities aligned with the Decade of Ocean Science. One of our champions, Dr. Laura David, gave us a lot to look forward to as she cited some of the ongoing efforts to highlight the importance of data as we address pressing issues such as coral reef destruction. The institution she represents, the University of the Philippines Marine Science Institute, plays a crucial role in helping to sustain commitments to the decade of ocean science. Meanwhile, the champion who has been with us even before the proclamation of a UN Decade of Ocean Science, our focal point for Intergovernmental or Oceanographic Commission or IOC, and the Decade of Ocean Science, Dr. Gil Jacinto, gave a clear rationale for this important decade and is optimistic about attaining the scientific knowledge and partnerships needed to manage the ocean sustainably. In the opening of MANAMo last August 29, Dr. Jacinto reminded all of us that our oceans are the heart and soul of our nation. He underscored that with science as our compass and our shared heritage as our anchor, we can navigate the challenges ahead and ensure that our seas remain a source of life, identity, and hope for generations to come. As we close the MANAMO and introduce the Decade of Ocean Science, I hope that after navigating the challenges, we will find ourselves appreciating the value of transformative ocean science. The UNESCO Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission said the implementation plan of the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, or the Ocean Decade, calls for transformative science and a revolution in how that science is produced, used, and disseminated. The notion of transformation is central to the Ocean Decade. The decade, both in terms of action and outcomes, needs to move beyond business as usual to a true revolution in ocean science. In the context of the decade, we need transformative ocean science that is solutions-focused and, where needed, is big, audacious, forward-looking, and spans geographies. So what could the Philippines offer through multi-stakeholder and community-driven initiatives? First is, of course, raising awareness on the Decade of Ocean Science with emphasis on the role of ridge-to-reef approach to the protection and sustainable management of oceans. Second is engaging champions from local communities. The third is crafting a volunteers-led blueprint for cultural heritage and ocean science interface. Fourth, participating in international platforms to promote Philippine initiatives. Fifth, inspiring and empowering lifelong learners. And of course, there are no age limits for this. So this is our proposed Philippine priority list. Where do we want to focus our efforts? We want to focus on the institutional setup and enabling mechanisms. We want to look at how we can pool our resources. We want to prepare a national plan in aligning with global plans and activities that includes policy instruments, program implementation as well. There are also partnerships, collaboration, community or multi-stakeholder engagement, as well as implementing, promoting, monitoring, reporting of plans, programs, and activities. So these are the areas of collaboration. We are looking at capacity building and technology transfer, the partnerships and financing, access to information, data and knowledge, and communication and awareness raising. So here we look at every generation because all of us have a part to play. Whoever you are, wherever you're from, no matter what age, we are all Gen Ocean. Of course, the core principles are mobilizing. The Gen Ocean will mobilize people from around the world and from different backgrounds to restore and protect the ocean. It should be people-led. The campaign will feature stories of people from around the world who are connected to various ocean issues. And it should be inspiring. communicating that restoring and protecting the ocean is everyone's responsibility. We want to look at people-led stories serving as an inspiration for audiences to draw upon and use knowledge to take action. So I think we have a video. Okay, that's it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those inspiring remarks, Secretary General Hinares. With that, the webinar has officially come to its end. But I hope that like our speakers, our distinguished speakers mentioned, we still continue to be champions for ocean science as well as maritime and archipelagic nation awareness. Thank you very much. We are honored that you attended today's webinar.